You also known as Duck Corella?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of made intent to
You
criminate.
got any business?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of intent to criminate.
You have any profession?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of made intent
You
to
have any
criminate.
occupation?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of made intent
Are
to
you a
criminate.
known racketeer?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of made intent to criminate.
Her name Winkleman of the Elizabeth
You ever
Police.
get any money from Costello?
No.
And did you ever get any money from Meyer Lansky?
I never got money from any of those fellas.
None of those
None
fellas?
of those fellas. None.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to the Smoke Show. Running a tad bit behind tonight, but we're going to make it. We've got with us tonight, we've got James, co-host of the Night Court Show, Big Ron, co-host of the Night Court Show, and Bruce Wayne, co-host of the Night Court Show, and might as well be a co-host of the Night Court Show. We've got Jason. Jason is our board leader on the Smoke Show for turning in some pretty fine dishes, but tonight may be different. Jason, we talked about how do we get to beef stroganoff? Can you tell us that?
I was originally going to do a tomahawk steak, and we got into an argument about beef stroganoff and how you indicated how much it doesn't taste good, and that hence turned into an argument, and that made me change my recipe to beef stroganoff.
Okay. I don't believe my argument that it doesn't taste good. I just didn't find it to be a smoke-worthy dish. But it's just my experience. But I wouldn't call this an argument necessarily.
Well, you challenged me, and I accepted the challenge and tried something I never did before, and it actually turned out really good.
Bruce, what did you think about the beef stroganoff? You were for it. You're like a stroganoff man, aren't you?
Yeah, stroganoff's good when done right.
Okay, a man, a few words. Big Ron, what do you think about smoked beef stroganoff?
I too am a stroganoff guy. Nobody else in my house is, so I don't get to have it that often. But I think that's an interesting concept, kind of like our cheesecake idea. So it can only go one of two ways. I guess my biggest concern is the milk, maybe the cream in it, how that would handle the smoke during the cooking process. If we would have a curdling issue. But I'm intrigued now. I didn't know about this smoked stroganoff.
Well, my experience with beef stroganoff has been, as a kid, my mother would make it, and it was okay. I mean, you wasn't mad when that hit the table, but it wasn't like you weren't running to dinner when that was there. But Jason, when you talk about stroganoff, you're not talking about this, are you? Is that how your stroganoff begins?
No, I've never used that, to be honest with you.
That's deluxe beef stroganoff. You see that on the box. It says it right there.
Oh, then it must be good, but I've never used that.
That's I take that down, Joe.
Well, let's look at it. Look at the dish. Look at the picture. That's quality picture right there. Is that what beef stroganoff looks like to you guys?
I don't know. That's like throwing up like Kraft mac and cheese and asking if that's the best mac and cheese you've ever had.
All right, I'll take it down. I'm just saying this is what comes to mind when I think of beef stroganoff. I think of something on par with Hamburger Helper. But did a little research on beef stroganoff. Wasn't sure where that actually came from, but it's actually a Russian dish. It was invented by a family, Stroganovs with a V, but we call it stroganoff, in Russia. Did y'all know that?
I did not. I thought it was a German dish this whole time. I didn't know that.
It became popular in the 1950s in America by service members had been to China before it was a communist country. The Chinese were serving it up there and making it for them, so they become to like it. And typically it's served with rice, but about that same time they started adding the noodles to it, which is, I guess, the beef stroganoff that we're looking at today. But Jason put this together. I'm not going to say I'm not impressed. He's turning some solid dishes, but let's let the audience and the our panel review. Let's take a look at it. Okay, let's talk about the ingredients. So you start with 1.5 pounds of cubed beef, box of noodles. Does it matter? It can be like spaghetti noodles. Does it matter? The little broad noodles like you have in yours?
No, I always go with either either the spirals or bow tie. I'm a big spiral fan because I think it just holds the flavor better. It's just personal choice.
So, but it doesn't matter. You could use any pasta.
Yeah, a lot of stroganoff. I think I used to use those. I think they're egg-based noodles. I just went with plain old pasta. And to backtrack to the cube beef, just to save on time, I just bought stew meat, and I didn't think when you do it in like a slow cooker, the cube meat breaks down a lot better. Because I was going to smoke the beef, the cube meat was a little, I think, tougher than it should have been. I wish I would have grabbed a sirloin or a ribeye and cubed that up instead of the stew beef, but it was still okay. But it would have been a lot better with a more tender cut of beef.
So if you use stew meat in your recipe, you're not going to have the opportunity to air quote stew it to make it tender, right?
You not like in a pressure cooker. You're literally just putting that smoke flavor in there, getting that ring of smoke on it, and it doesn't give it an opportunity to kind of break down.
Okay. So we got 1 white onion, 2 cups of beef broth, 2 tablespoons of mustard, and I think you will use Dijon mustard. Am I right?
Yeah, it was Dijon mustard.
2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, a tub of sour cream. To use the whole tub.
Yep, the whole thing.
Okay. Colby cheese. Why Colby cheese?
I was debating between kind of a pepper jack or a Colby, and I didn't want to risk it being too peppery, so I went with the Colby. I've never put cheese before. I thought since I'm smoking it, the cheese would actually help thicken it up and give it a little bit more dairy flavor to the sauce, and it actually turned out pretty good.
Okay. And sliced mushrooms, 1 stick of butter, and of course we've got meat church. Couldn't be a Jason dish without meat church, but you're using 3. Using the holy cow, herb and garlic, and blanco, right? I've seen the holy cow and blanco with your recipes, but the first time I've seen the herb and garlic.
I use herb and garlic on a lot of stuff. I used that. I sprinkled the onions before I sauteed it, and then at the final end, I gave it another little herb and garlic dusting.
Okay. So those are the ingredients. If one takes this to the grocery store and comes back with all these ingredients, they'll be able to perform what you did with the stroganoff, right?
Yep.
All right. Let's continue with our Russian tour. Okay, so we're going to dice the onion, place a stick of butter and the onion on high heat in a cast iron pan. You did that on the grill, correct?
Yeah. Again, one thing I really like about Piss Boss is you can open up that slide and get direct flame on your pan. I'm not sure if you had a Traeger or something, you could get it like that unless you had a side grill. But yeah, I just threw all the stuff in a cast iron pan and put it right on the pit boss and sauteed it.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's say you don't want to use the smoker for this grill or the sauteing portion of this. Could you do that on the stovetop? Would it make
Easily.
a difference?
No, it doesn't make a difference. I had the grill going, figured might as well use it.
Okay, so you're gonna saute the onions. What are we doing here? A stick of butter. Saute the onions. Add mushrooms, beef broth, and Worcestershire sauce.
Yep.
Add smoke.
So basically, once the onions were sauteed, I threw in the mushrooms, beef broth with the, it's not in here, but the mustard and the W sauce I mixed up beforehand, stirred it up, poured it in, and it was, I think, 2 cups of beef broth. And then I grabbed the beef once it kind of cooled down, and I threw the beef back into the pan. I mixed all that together, threw just a tinfoil cover on it, and let her simmer. Put it on the top rack so it wasn't direct heat. Just let it simmer for about an hour or so.
Okay, now there was some, I think, some missteps here with the Worcestershire sauce and the mustard. So you mixed the quantity of mustard and the 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. You mix that together and you put it in with the onions, or do you put it on the meat?
No, I poured 2 cups of beef broth. I put the mustard and the W sauce in the beef broth, and then I just stirred that up, and then poured that whole thing over the onions and the mushrooms, and then add the beef to it as well.
Okay, I got you there. Let's see how that looks. So there it is on the grill. So my animation is not correct. You put that into the beef broth.
Correct.
Okay. So you get all that. That's working on the smoker right now, right? So now you're going to go inside. You're going to boil. You start your noodles, mix the cheese, sour cream, and then we're ready to pull the sauce off, right?
Yep.
All right. Let's see how that looks. Let me ask you, did you use the whole bag of cheese?
About 3/4 of it.
So most
of the bag. And I didn't cook the noodles all the way through because they were going to continue to cook once we put them in here. So I just had them kind of al dente and not all the way through. I didn't want them too soggy.
Now, if you're doing, and this is at my elevation, if you're doing spaghetti, it's about 9 minutes for al dente boiling. So you're somewhere around 8 or 9 minutes on the boil and then pull it off?
I was actually probably more like 7.
Because you could afford to be a little stiffer on the al dente because you're going to continue to cook. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're looking at there is, if we were in New Orleans, we call that the roux. That is essentially this is the sauce of the stroganoff that we're looking at in the picture there. We got mushrooms, the beef broth, mustard, Worcestershire sauce, the smoked meat, which looks very good, by the way. All that's in there, but there's no noodles and no cheese, right? Okay.
Not yet.
Here we go. So now we're adding the cheese and the sour cream and the noodles. There they are. Okay. Talk us through this one. So we're going to do all this cooking and we'll get it there. Now we're going to put it back on the smoker for 30 minutes. And it looked like you had it covered. Is that what you do for that last 30 minutes or so? What's the purpose of this last 30 minutes?
Just to get everything to kind of the noodles to absorb all the sauce in there and just simmer stuff up and let it thicken up. I don't like my stroganoff runny. So just to thicken everything up a little bit. And that took about 30 minutes.
So we're cooking at this point. We're not really smoking. We're going to finish out the simmer, the cook, to get the ingredients to meld together, right?
Yeah, correct. I will, I'll move forward here. Came back out and took the lid off, and I put some shredded Parmesan on it and a couple more seasoning, and I left the lid off, and I kind of smoked it at the end until the Parmesan was almost melted. So to kind of give it a one last dose of smoke.
Okay. Let's see it. So there's our 30 minutes covered. There's your grated cheese. And what are we doing here? We've got Blanco, we've got meat church, and the Parmesan going on top, right?
Yep, the grated cheese, Blanco, and then the garlic and herb kind of top it off.
So you smoked it uncovered until the Parmesan cheese started to melt a bit, right?
Yeah, not completely melt, but melted enough that it was attached to the food.
Okay. Okay, so there's our final dish. That's it coming off. You threw maybe some fresh cheese on top of the melted cheese. Am I seeing that right?
Yeah, I'm a big Parmesan cheese guy.
As you can't have too much cheese. Nobody's ever complained about that. So this is the beef stroganoff. Let's finish it out and let's talk about it.
So my wife is not a fan of beef stroganoff. She actually had 2 helpings of this. She liked it a lot, and I actually was very impressed how it turned out. It was one of the better smoked items I think I've made, and I really did this from. I took about 4 different recipes and kind of combined some stuff together. It was kind of a true experiment, to be honest with you. I've never done it before, but it turned out pretty good. And I stayed away from stuff like I think Ron or Bruce was saying, in regular stroganoff, you put heavy whipping cream and stuff in there. And I was a little concerned about the dairy products being smoked. So I stayed away from those pretty much altogether outside of cheese. But no, I was very happy how it turned out.
Okay. Now, originally we talked about the stroganoff when you traded stroganoff for a ribeye tomahawk, which I'm still baffled by, but I will say I'm impressed that you had the fortitude to be able to make that decision. But we talked about, like my mom made, it was a can of cream of mushroom soup, some noodles, some hamburger meat, and maybe some other spices in it. So you didn't go that route, though. I didn't see a can of Campbell's cream of mushroom soup on the list. So you added fresh mushrooms and forgo the cream of mushroom, right?
Yeah, because I was lazy. I bought sliced baby bellas. I think I used 16 ounces of mushrooms. I think that's what it was. So yeah, no cream of mushroom soup. No, everything was kept it as organic as I possibly could, I guess.
Okay, and I was impressed with that. I think it would have been disappointing if I'd seen a can of cream of mushroom soup there. But let's go to Big Ron. You've seen the video, this Russian dish. What do you think about it?
Everything but the mushrooms. Can't do the mushrooms. Other than that, it looks good. I think I would have to taste it, but I think part of the stroganoff is that heavy cream kind of accents the flavor. So far, every dish that Jason's done that I've recreated, he has not steered us wrong. So, with the exception of the mushrooms, I'm going to have to try this dish also.
Well, now, Big Ron, at the end of the show, we're going to go over some of the dishes that have been recreated and talk about those. So don't give us too much on those. But you have tried a couple of at least 2 of the Jason dishes, right?
I have, yes.
Okay. We're going to talk about it towards the end of the show. All right, Bruce, what do you think about the stroganoff? Now, you were in the argument or the debate that we had on this in the middle of the week that fine dining, if one just uses finer ingredients, then the stroganoff will be delicious, just as good as a ribeye tomahawk steak, I believe was your argument. So how do you feel about it now?
That looks fantastic and better than how you would do it with hamburger helper and cream of mushroom soup. That's the proper way to do it, Jason. Well done.
I like how you threw that back on me. I have never made stroganoff. Only time I've ever eaten it was either in the army or when my mom made it when I was growing up poor. I've never never made stroganoff myself.
Well, if it ain't done right with MREs, then it's not worth making.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's not like I felt like I've missed it in my life by not making it or not pursuing it anywhere. But um, I want to go to James, and then I want Jason. I want you to try to describe how much smoke you were able to get into that dish. Go ahead, James.
Does anybody know how much an EpiPen costs in this country?
Not enough, I'm guessing.
Well, I don't know. Whatever that is, it's probably what it would be worth to try that beef stroganoff because mushrooms will kill me, but I would fuck with that. That looks really good.
Jason,
Yeah.
could you make it without mushrooms?
I wouldn't, but I like mushrooms.
Yeah, I don't know that it's stroganoff without mushrooms, but I guess you could.
I'm right there with James. It's not so much that James and I don't like mushrooms, but unless you want to see us foaming at the mouth and our heart stops, then it's probably best we don't eat the mushrooms.
Now, according to the
Yeah.
research I did on this dish, the rice and pasta are later additions. The original beef stroganoff was the beef being sauteed in the pan. It was the actual meat was the stroganoff, or the beef stroganoff. So I think mushrooms were an addition later too. So James, there's a good possibility you could have stroganoff without the mushrooms and the EpiPen. But let's talk about the smoke, Jason. How strong was the smoke flavor in there? Did it make a distinct difference? Could you have made this in stovetop in the oven and achieve the same level of dish?
No, I think you could simplify the whole thing and just smoke the meat. The meat had a definite smoky taste. I used hickory. The onions, I couldn't really taste, any smoke in the sautéed onions, but it was the meat that I could really taste. The smoke.
And you say your wife is not a fan of stroganoff. She's in my camp, right?
Correct. Yep.
And what was her verbatim quote on this?
It was good. One of the better ones I've made, she said.
Oh yeah, I have to
Well-
go back and read my messages. I thought there was another quote.
Oh, God.
All right, my friend, I'm impressed. You took a very basic dish that is a hamburger helper staple. Matter of fact, they even make a deluxe version. I showed it to you. I'll bring it up again if y'all want to see that, in case you want to get you some the next time you're at the grocery store. But you took a very basic dish and you brought it up some levels and you added smoke to it. So I'm going to give you credit on that. Hang on. What is B saying here? Stroganoff is good. Why don't you enjoy it, Joe? Because I'm a red-blooded American, B. I don't eat Russian dishes. But Jason's added another one to his repertoire that I may have to try just so I can see what it's like smoked. Because I'm going to give you that. That was pretty good. Now, I've got a surprise edition tonight. Jason, once again, my friend, you're bringing the level of this show up with the dishes that you do. They're pretty amazing. And I like the way you approach it and break your ingredients down, and you're in and out on that smoker several times on these dishes just to perfect them and bring them good. So you're leader of the pack, 5 gold stars up to this point for damn sure.
Well, thank you, and I am going to do a tomahawk next time. Something very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm craving one too now.
What about what do y'all think about tomato soup and grilled cheeses?
No, I'm
That's
doing a
one of my
tomahawk.
favorite. One of my favorite.
Yeah. Wonder if you could smoke that soup, what that would be like. You could definitely smoke the cheese for the grilled cheese. Maybe even smoke ham and do ham and grilled cheese with the tomato soup.
Is this a challenge like my cheesecake?
No, it's going to be a tomahawk.
I never heard of tomahawk tomato soup. How do you do that? All right, I got at least a good solid 4 days to convince you to not do the tomahawk and do tomato soup. We'll see how it turns out. Y'all tune in next Sunday to see what he actually gives into. But we're going to do a little retro. We're on our 12th episode of Smoke Show, but I'm going to take us back to a big Ron recipe, and that's the shotgun shells. For those of you that missed it, those of you who've seen it, we're going to take a look at it again and go over that again. So, Ron, I hope you remember how this one goes.
Roll the tape, buddy. And for those of you that don't remember, I did substitute for sweet Italian sausage. I think it came out a lot better. For those that like something a little spicier, the chorizo will work very, very well in this.
Okay. So you use what, sweet Italian sausage for yours, correct?
Yeah, I use sweet Italian sausage, and I did not use the jalapenos because I didn't want to get them too hot. Just because of some of the taste, and people in the house won't like it, but definitely people are that like that kind of stuff can use them. It'll give that little extra kick.
Okay. And now we've got 1 tablespoon of your favorite all-purpose blend seasoning. Could you be more specific about that?
It's basically seasonal. Everybody has their own favorite ones. We all know, like Jason. Jason uses his meat church for everything. I prefer my my Everglades seasoning and my my GPS for when I do a lot of my stuff. So everybody's got their favorite. So whichever one your preference to. It's basically just salt, pepper, garlic, a couple of other seasonings depending. Each brand's a little bit different, but it's got those basics: salt, pepper, garlic.
So you're not looking for a specific flavor profile. You're just looking for the profile that you like for this dish, right?
Yeah, for the meat, just to give it some flavor. I would definitely, after making it, I think I made a comment the last time we did this, go a little bit heavier on the seasoning. Otherwise, some of those the other meats and stuff will definitely overpower it. So it's definitely a recipe to play with.
Okay. So we got a 1 small yellow onion, dice that up, 3 to 4 jalapenos seeded and diced, but you did not use that, but it can be used in this recipe. 4 garlic cloves minced, 1 cup of cheddar cheese shredded, 1.5 cups of mozzarella cheese shredded, 18-ounce box of manicotti shells, or 14 to 16 shells is what you need for this recipe. 14 to 16 slices of thick cut bacon. Did you have a preference on like hickory smoked bacon, or what type of bacon did you use?
I do prefer a hickory bacon. I don't like the sweeter bacons. And for anybody out there that has diabetic issues, I would stay away from the sweeter bacons. With some of the stuff that's in the recipe, it will definitely shoot your sugar up.
Sure enough. And then once again, your favorite barbecue sauce for glazing. That's just the flavor profile that you prefer for these, correct?
And that's completely up to you to use the barbecue sauce or not. And that gets put on at the very end.
All right, very good. Let's watch this go again. So what do we got there? We've got the meats, the sausage, the onions.
And the garlic. Never enough garlic.
Now you're adding the Spice World garlic, right? There it is in the bowl. So this reminds me a bit of like meatloaf. You got your cheese there too?
Yeah, I guess that's the way to look at it. You could definitely see the meatloaf kind of idea with different meats mixed in with each other to get your base ingredient.
Okay. So once we get that done, what are we going to do? We're going to stuff the manicotti shells with the mixture and place on a wire rack. Wrap each shell with 1 slice of bacon and place back on the wire rack. Sprinkle with additional barbecue or seasoning of your choice. Okay, so we're gonna put that meat mixture, the meatloaf that we just kind of made in a bowl. You're gonna stuff that into the manicotti shells. Aren't they round like little tubes?
They are, and it's very important that you stuff the shells uncooked. And we're gonna get when we get to the next step here, you're gonna see the asterisks. and you've wrapped them, put them in the fridge 4 to 6 hours. It's very important that the natural moistures in the meats will help soften those shells prior to cooking. That's very, very important. You cannot miss that step.
Okay, and we want to talk about that again when we get to it with the video, because I remember you bringing that up and you using hard pasta to begin a dish, which reminds me, folks, let's put a pin in. We've not done meatloaf. I've heard it brought up several times on the show, but no one's actually smoked meatloaf. So I'm going to throw that challenge out there, but we'll talk about that after the video. Let's see how these go.
Someone needs to smoke some coffee cake.
I heard you, my friend, on coffee cake. We can definitely do that. So these are the hard or uncooked manicotti shells right there that you put together.
That is correct.
All right, let's talk about bacon. Is it one slice of bacon to cover these bad boys, or is it two? What's the formula there?
One bacon will get around them and give them a covering. Depends on how much bacon you like. You could put 2 or 3 on there. It's completely up to the person making them. One piece will, in fact, cover them. You got to kind of stretch them a bit, but they'll get around there.
It's been my experience when you're wrapping things with bacon and on the grill that you have inconsistencies on how the bacon's cooked. Some of it's not so cooked, some of it's overcooked. It's always a concern with me. If I'm going to wrap something with bacon, I like to only do it one time. It gives me a better chance of getting a consistency and heat across the bacon. What do you think?
I agree. If you've got it overlapping, you're going to get some soft spots in there, and everybody's different on the way they like their bacon. Some people like their bacon a little bit on the softer side. Other people like their bacon burned. So it just all depends. I would definitely cook this until you get the good coloring around the outside. I wouldn't go as far as having it crispy, but I would definitely want it to be firm.
Okay. Let's see. B's experienced what I've had. Never had luck cooking bacon wrapped around anything. There's some tips we'll talk about afterwards that B might help. All right, so there they are. You're doing these, and now they're going to go to the fridge afterwards, right? Oh, there
They're
it
going to go
is.
straight to the fridge. They'll sit 4 to 6 hours in the fridge. Like I said before, extremely important step.
So this helps with adding some moisture to the manicotti, so when you actually do the cook, then it'll be done and not al dente or raw, right?
That's correct. So if you don't do this step, the moisture won't transfer and you won't soften those noodles up. And then when you cook them on the smoker and the grill, you won't cook them long enough for the fats and the greases inside the meats to soften those shells. So you'll end up with a very crunchy shell, and it tastes nothing like tacos. So you're definitely going to want to do this.
So that would be a disappointing.
You'd be having a bad day.
Mouthfeel.
I don't even know where to go with that.
Let's see it.
Does she come with the recipe?
Yeah, I've got her on stock photo. She can go with any recipe you like. Okay, so once they've been in the refrigerator for 4 hours or so, you're going to preheat your smoker to 275. Add you did a few chunks of cherry or apple wood. Then we're going to remove the wire rack from the cookie sheet and place the wire rack on the smoker for 1 hour, right?
That's the best way to do it. And by leaving that wire rack on there, you get a nice convection around your item, and you're not going to get a lot of burn on it. You're not looking to grill these. You're definitely looking to do this more like a heat to get the smoke into it, and then a constant radiate heat around them, so you get a nice even cook.
Very well. So there they are. They're on the pellet smoker, aka microwave smoker, and you've got them on a wire rack. I see it. Okay, so 1 hour of smoke. Now you're going to increase the temperature to 350 and smoke for another 10 minutes. Brush your shells with barbecue sauce and cook for an additional 10 minutes and remove from the smoke. got to give you, man, the bacon looks cooked well. Looks like you did
Yeah,
a
they
good
came
job.
out really well.
All right, give us an idea. What was the flavor profile on these? You've got barbecue sauce. You've got smoke. You got sausage. What was it like biting into one of those?
Yeah, it's a really interesting flavor profile. So you're gonna get the initial flavor of the bacon and the barbecue sauce, followed up by whatever seasonings you're using on your ground beef, because obviously that's going to pick up the flavor. Then you'll get with mine, you'll get the sweetness of the Italian sausage. So it's, I guess a meatloaf is a way to describe it, or maybe a hamburger stuffed in a tube. I don't know. They're really good. Everybody in the house liked them. They didn't last very long, and this is definitely something that you can prepare the night before, if you're going to have a lot of people over, and just roll them out to the grill.
Well, what about the smoke flavor?
The pasta shells picked the smoke flavor up fairly quick. I was kind of surprised at that, but a lot of that starch in there did actually pick up the smoke flavor. So it was good. It was good all the way around.
So you did have a good smoke flavor because you got a lot of barbecue sauce. You got a lot of things in there competing for the smoke flavor. Is the reason I'm asking.
Yeah, you do have a lot. You do have a lot in there. And that's part of the reason you don't put the barbecue sauce on at the very end. Otherwise, you're obviously going to seal the meat and the pasta up, and none of that smoke's going to penetrate through that barbecue sauce. So that's the very, very end. And I can even go as far as saying the barbecue sauce is going to be personal preference. You could throw a barbecue sauce on the side if maybe people want to use it as a dip. What was the consistency of the pasta? It was just a little bit past al dente. You don't want to get it so soft to where it's falling apart, Casey. You still want to hold its shape. The bacon's going to help with that. But if you go too long with it or too slow, then you will overcook the pasta, and that will happen when you refrigerate them for a while. You'll get that general moisture input into the pasta, and then you can overcook it on the grill. But if you don't do it that way.
Now, you had some very specific times. I can roll the video back to see it, but are those times pretty, if you're at those temperatures for the times that you listed, are you pretty comfortable with that if people followed that as a rule?
Yeah, I'm fairly comfortable with that. Again, and if you, depending on what kind of grill you have, you can see mine. There you'll have hot spots, so you've got to watch for hot spots. And that's with any grill. So if you're gonna do those on like a kettle grill, I would definitely do an indirect smoke. Have those off to one side and your charcoal on the other. If you're going to do a traditional smoker, an offset, then you're not as concerned about the hot spot as you are just getting the movement of the heat and the smoke across the noodles. And then with Jason and myself, like he's saying about the pit boss, we have the burn chamber in the center. Depending on what you're trying to do, you do have to look for that hot spot. Is not to burn the bacon and the noodles on one side. So there is a little bit of a learning curve depending on what kind of grill you're using.
I tell you what, between the two of you, I'm going to have to really work on get my affiliate program for Pit Boss and Meat Church, so I can pick up the change. You guys pick it up as many times as you mention it in each show. But yeah, Casey, if you want to give this a shot, anybody wants to give this a shot, the video will be on obviously tonight's smoke show, but you can catch it on my timeline again. If you follow that, it should get you something close to the same results. But let's talk about wrapping something. She asked if I have that in DM form. No, Casey, I've got it in video form. I don't have it in DM form. But I might be able to DM the video to you, so stand by. I'll do that for you. But let's talk about a lot of things are wrapped in bacon. We saw the shotgun shells are wrapped in bacon. You can do jalapeno poppers. We saw Vet do those wrapped in bacon. I like quail breast or even whole quail when you smoke those. I like to wrap them in bacon as well. So, Jason, what are your tips on when something's wrapped in bacon? How do you get a consistent cook on that so that you're consistent in the heat level or the temperature of the bacon all the way around? In other words, if you want it well done, it's all well done. If people like bacon that's less than well done, then all of it's that way instead of having all three conditions of what bacon can be on one little wrap. Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, it depends on what you're. So I one of my favorites is bacon wrapped shrimp, but shrimp cook so fast that you got to find a very, very thin cut of bacon for something like that. Now, if you're going to do the poppers or the shotgun shells, you can go with a little thicker piece because what you're actually trying to smoke is going to take a little bit longer to smoke. So you just kind of you mix and match what your main piece of the dish is. So if it's shrimp, knowing that shrimp cooks really fast, you're going to want a bacon that's going to cook with the shrimp so you don't overcook the shrimp. If that makes it, I go by thickness of bacon.
No, that makes perfect sense. Now, Big Ron, you've given some of your tips. Do you have any more tips on wrapping something with bacon and cooking?
Jason's pretty spot on with what he's saying with the thickness of the bacon. If you're going to do something that cooks very quick, like shrimp, you're definitely going to want to use a thin cut of bacon. You're not going to want to go with a thick or a rustic or a cowboy cut, however you want to go with that, versus something like a filet mignon. You could go with that thicker cut. So I completely agree with Jason on that. The thickness of the cut is going to make a difference with what you're cooking, and the flavor of the bacon is going to make a difference with what you're cooking because that's going to definitely change your flavor profile. If you go with a maple cured or versus a hickory cured, you're going to have the sweetness versus the savory or the rustic flavor. Also, if you're depending on the cut of the bacon, some bacons will have more fat, some will have more meat on them. So that's another thing to look at when you're making some of these, as the fats will cause the bacon to contract faster versus the meatier bacons are not going to shrivel up or contract as fast. So all things to look at when making any dish that's going to be wrapped with bacon.
Okay, when we put these on the heat, any tips on where you put that and how you put it? I noticed you used a wire rack, Big Ron. But Jason, do you have any tips on where you put that on the grill?
When I wrap stuff, I typically go on the second shelf. I don't want to. It needs to be a slower cook. You go on the bottom rack and put it directly on the heat. You risk burning the stuff on the inside and the bacon. So I prefer most of my cooks. I go, if the recipe calls for 350, I'll do it at 300. It's going to take a little bit longer to cook, but at least I know I'm not going to burn it. And I'm going to get a good solid cook. If it takes an extra 30 minutes, so be it. But I usually go above the heat, but not on the heat, is if I'm wrapping something in bacon.
Okay. Those are very good tips. Bruce, do you have any? James? Let's go to Bruce first. Any experience with wrapping bacon or any tips to give, or you're still writing notes?
I think they pretty much covered all I knew and then added some on top of that. Very, very good to know. But yeah, you want the cook times of what you're cooking to be the same. So yeah, what they're saying about the thickness for the smaller shrimp. Yeah, good advice.
Sounds good. James, anything to add to that?
I'm still writing notes. The only thing I would add is I want to do bacon wrap bacon with bacon bits. But yeah.
Well, I tell you what, keep your pen in your hand. I agree with everything that Jason and Big Ron said when it comes to baking or wrapping bacon on other dishes. You do want to make sure that the bacon is going to be done at the same time that whatever you wrapped in is done. A couple of ways to do that with bigger pieces of like quail, and I'll use that as an example. I'll cook the quail a little bit. I'll try to get it close to temperature, and then I'll bring it off, and then I'll wrap bacon, and I go take it to a higher shelf. We want to bake bacon. You don't want to grill it. And when I say that is you when you've got it on the smoker, you've got the heat's coming from the bottom up, and that's a lot of heat. So you want to try to get it away from the direct heat where the bacon is. Otherwise, the bottom will cook and be well done, and the upper side will be less well done. But you'll have two different. When I'm saying temperatures, like meat temperatures, you'll have two different temperatures on one piece, which doesn't look good, and it's probably not the best to eat. I will put them on a higher rack, and I'll turn them more often with lower heat, just like Jason says. But I like the thinner wrap bacon. But when you're wrapping it, wrap it tight. Pull the bacon as you go. And actually, Big Ron did this. I was watching the video that he sent for this one. You want to wrap that bacon tight and snug it to whatever the product is that you're wrapping, and try not to overlap bacon too many times, because if you do that, what you overlap, what's underneath is going to be protected and will be less done than what's on the outside or the outer wrap. But that's the tips. B. I hope that helps you with when you do that. Most of the time, biggest mistake I see with people who wrap bacon is and they're grilling is they put it on the grill and think they're going to turn it enough to keep it cooking evenly. With bacon, it cooks so quickly that you're not going to be able to keep up. You'll have spots that are less done, and you'll have spots that are way too much done. But when you go with bacon wrapped around something, try to tone your heat down. Try to get less direct heat to it. You want heat all the way around it, and that should perform a better wrapped bacon product. But anybody have anything else to add to Big Ron's shotgun shells, Italian style?
I've done those a couple years, and I used a different meat, Ron, than you did. I kind of like, if I to do it again, I think I'd go with more of a Italian flavor to it. Mine, I think, was ground beef, and it was kind of bland for me. But I liked how you kind of spiced it up a little bit.
Yeah, if you use just a straight ground beef, and again, maybe I don't know how much of your seasoning you used, or if you were meat churching it then or not, but that's definitely going to make a big difference. But yeah, you need the blend. They do make some sweet chorizos out there that aren't as spicy. I know down here in the South where I live, Publix brand chorizo is very, very good. But with that said, Johnsonville makes a very good one also. And then there's some if you go to the international aisle at most grocery stores, they have some that are in a vacuum packed package that are on the shelves next to the Goya products that aren't too bad. But those are going to be harder to use in this recipe. You're definitely going to need something that's already raw and is able to be crumbled to be put into the recipe. So it all depends on where you want to go with it. And then when it comes to the peppers, like I said, not a whole lot of jalapeno eating in my house. Partially because my wife's has an allergy to peppers, so we don't eat a whole lot of jalapenos. My daughter, on the other hand, will eat the things raw all day long. So it's definitely a recipe to play with to fit your personal flavor profiles and the people that you're serving.
Now, and I noticed that you did that. You tailored that recipe to fit your household, what you like in your household, and I think that's an awesome thing to do. In fact, most people, folks, when you're looking at a recipe, tailor to your liking and to your family's liking. That's kind of what you're supposed to do when you cook. Now, we talked about earlier in the show, Big Ron, you've tried how many recipes of Jason's?
Definitely did the chili. That is definitely one of my favorite. I'm trying to think of the other ones I did. Jason's put out so many. Him and I have kind of been back and forth with the recipes. The chili is definitely one of the big ones I did. What, Jason? There was something else you just did recently. I'm trying to think of what it was.
Smoked macaroni?
Nope, wasn't the macaroni.
Well, I know we talked about the meatball sliders, but let's talk about the chili. So, were you able to go back and watch the video and reproduce that way?
No, I cheated. I had Jason send me the recipe.
Well, cheese and rice. So, how did it turn out?
It turned out phenomenal. In fact, my wife said that's the only way we're going to make chili from now on. The only questions I had, and Jason and I have talked kind of off to the side about this, was the consistency of the chili. When I got done, mine was extremely thick. And I was kind of curious how much moisture he had in his. Come to find out, I probably should have used more either tomato sauce or canned tomatoes when I made it to give it a little bit more, to thin it out a little bit. But the flavor profile was phenomenal. My daughter despises chili. She hates it. She finds out we're having chili for dinner. She'll eat ramen. She had 3 bowls of it. So Jason's chili was spot on. Probably one of the best chilies I've had. The only other one I've had that was even close to his, and it wasn't even better with his. It was just close to his. So I had a sailor working for me. We had a chili cook off, and she made hers with beer, and it was pretty phenomenal because she used Guinness.
Well, I was going to tell you if your chili or other dishes that are similar to chili are too thick, you can add moisture by things like beer, alcohol, or even just water. You can thin them down. Just don't want to do it in the last hour of cook. You want to do it prior to that last hour of cook so that whatever moisture you put in there has a chance to meld and actually cook and have flavor instead of diluting it. Well, let's talk about next week. Sounds like we might have a ribeye tomahawk thing going from Jason. Is anybody willing to do a meatloaf?
I've done multiple meatloafs. I can do another meatloaf.
Have you smoked a meatloaf?
That's the only way I make my meatloaf.
Shut up.
Meatloaf, and I put a nice core of mozzarella cheese down the center of it. It goes in the smoker. Good stuff.
All right. That's a challenge. I want to see a smoked meatloaf next Sunday for our viewers.
Did you guys read what was in their DMs of taking trimmings and smoking those, grinding them up into hamburgers and making that?
Where did you get this?
Yeah, it was in the Night Crew DMs, I think.
No, I've never heard of this. So you do what?
I think Grizz actually suggested it like 3 hours ago or something.
Okay, well, give me a chance to go back and read that DM, and I can have a comment on it. I don't know enough to make a comment. What are you smoking, and then what are you making out of hamburgers?
I believe the premise was taking trimmings from other meat things, like you'd smoke, the tomahawk or brisket or whatever. You take one of those trimmings and you smoke those, not necessarily rendering down the fat. You trim all the fat or most of the fat out of that and just smoke the trimmings, and then grind that down to make hamburger meat. And then you make hamburgers out of the smoked trimmings.
What do you think about that, Bruce Wayne?
I thought about that and I was like, dude, that sounds like a theme for the next week. If everybody did that, just have a whole bunch of different takes on that general premise, and everybody come over with burgers. That'd be a nice show right there.
I mean, I think once you smoke it, you're going to have trouble getting those patties to stick together. Like, I don't know how you have that fat and the moisture to stick them into a patty after you've already smoked it.
Well, I mean, you could take all of the trimmed fat from those trimmings, render that down, add that to it after you've smoked it to make that fat content, have it congeal and make those burgers. I mean, maybe. I don't know. You just figure it out.
I could figure out a couple of techniques there that I kind of agree with Bruce. I don't know that you could take your hamburger meat and smoke it with heat very long before you will lose the ability for it to bind itself. But I can think of a couple of techniques that I think you could to get a good smoky burger. Are we going to do that? Are we going to challenge it out for hamburgers next week and deny Jason once again a tomahawk ribeye? I'm down with it.
I'm down too. The way I do burgers is I'll smoke the patties. I only use Wagyu beef burgers, and then I smoke that for about 30 to 45 minutes. Then you pull it off, you ramp up the heat, and then you cook them. That's the only way I've done that for the last year plus, probably 2 years now.
Well, let's see a video on it. Let's get some pictures, and let's do that for next week. You good with that, Jason?
No, I'm not doing that. I'm doing a tomahawk, and I was actually going to add bacon wrapped shrimp and do a surf and turf.
I thought you were doing something.
What about burgers, man?
What's that? I missed that.
Oh no, you were doing tomato soup. That's right.
No, I am doing a tomahawk ribeye and bacon wrapped shrimp. Have fun with your smoked hamburgers.
Wait, you're gonna do a tomahawk ribeye and basically a surf and turf on Hamburger Week?
It's not Hamburger Week for me.
Wait,
it's surf and turf. No,
I'm
it's
gonna
not.
post. I'm gonna post it every day that it's Hamburger Week.
I
That's what
kind
we're
of
gonna
like
do.
the idea of doing a themed smoke show where everyone comes back with their own. Like we do burgers, we do salmon. Everyone got to cook the same thing, just in their own way.
Well, I tell you what, I'm not going to deny the man a tomahawk ribeye. I was impressed that he threw that aside for beef stroganoff. That I was able to hit the right button to make that happen. But I'm not going to try that again. Jason, you do your tomahawk. Big Ron, I would like to see a meatloaf from you.
Yeah, I've done meatballs too.
And then we'll maybe next week we'll make it hamburger week, and we'll all come back with our versions of hamburgers.
Hey, Jason, instead of doing the shrimp, Jason, why don't you recreate my lobster tail?
Ooh.
Okay, now that was a solid dish turned in by Big Ron, and he gave all the critical
All right.
techniques that
All right,
you
I'll
would
go
need to
lobster
do
tail.
that. Yes, lobster tail.
Lobster tail it is. All right. Jason and I love going back and forth with each other's recipes.
And B says surf and something there that I'm not sure. Surf and turf is grubbin. She is 100% correct. That is a meal no one would turn away. But folks, with that said, that's going to be our show for the Sunday night. Give us a little while, maybe 20 minutes, and we'll kick up a little bit of an after party tonight to talk about some other things. But once again, my hat's off to you, Jason. You've taken a literally a mundane economy food, and you've raised the bar on that to something that I think even I would try. And I'm not a stroganoff guy, but even I want to try that. So once again, 5 gold stars to Jason. Big Ron, obviously, solid entry from some weeks back with the shotgun shells. So I want to appreciate that one as well. Guys, with that, that's our show. We'll, like I say, give us about 20, maybe 30 minutes. Look for us. We'll kick up an after party and we'll talk some more stuff. And if Jason's not there, we'll talk smack about Jason, which is my favorite.
Jason's got in the wrong profession.
Yeah, no, he's in the right profession for smack talking, I promise you.
Oh, hell yeah.
All right, folks. Thanks. We're going to end it here.